Hello, I'm working in Photoshop CS4, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you some quick skin fix using the clone stamp tool on Lighten. And then we're going to move right ahead to create individual lashes to enhance the existing lashes. So the skin is a minor part of this tutorial, and the lashes are what I really want to try to teach you. The next thing to do here right away, if you have a picture, is to launch a clean layer. And on that clean layer, as always, is where we do our retouching so we don't destroy the original. You can pick your clone stamp tool, and what we're going to do is set it to lighten in my mode box up at the top and set the opacity to about 50%. Now keep in mind, whenever you are doing retouching of any sort, if you're using the clone stamp tool or a healing brush tool, or you're going ahead and you're using the icon over here, which is the spot healing tool, you always want to do your retouching on a separate layer so that it lives above the actual copy on the bottom or the original. And you want to make sure that you have all layers sampled, and you want to make sure that your source up at the top is called sampled, not pattern. So I'm going to click to make sure I'm live at my top layer. I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool. It's at 50%. I'm going to make a decent sized brush here. And what I'm going to do is sample a point by hitting Option. The crosshairs come up inside the circle. It's sampling that area of skin. So I click once, and now I have sampled that, and I can run through, and the crosshairs are following with the approximation from that area. It's always best to take a sample point near and close to the area you're trying to correct, because that way the pixels and the light are going to be the most similar, and it'll be easier to make a good match. So I'm going to move through this very quickly. Every time I reach a new area, I hold down Option, I click once, it samples that area of skin, and then I make a couple of passes at the area that I want to kind of fix up and clean up. So I'm doing a quick job here. It's not exactly how I would spend a lot of the time. I would really kind of do more detailed work with something like this. But for our purposes today, it helps just to kind of run through this quickly, and we can get on to lashes. On this layer also, you can drop down your adjustment and the opacity of that adjustment to 70% and find something that looks a little more realistic if you feel like you've erased too much of the integrity of the skin. This is fine for here. I'm going to leave it at 80%, and let's take care of our lashes. So for starters, let's zoom in pretty close by hitting Command+. That'll bring us in nice and tight on the eye. And let's launch a new layer, which is next to the garbage icon at the bottom. This is going to be the layer that your lashes will be done on. What we need to do is select a brush, and the way to do that, if you don't see your brush palette up, is to come down and hit Window, drop down, and under Adjustments you can hit Brushes. This will launch the default brush palette. You can go to Brush Presets, and one of the brushes that ships with Photoshop is a hard mechanical 3-pixel brush. If you don't see them here, you can load all of them in here by clicking on the brush. This is a little menu that drops down from this little tiny arrow here, which allows you to reload your brushes and to load all of the brushes that are default that ship with Photoshop. So there's assorted brushes, basic brushes, drop shadow brushes, faux finish brushes, natural bristle, and so on. So when you load all your brushes in, you should be able to come in, hit Brush Presets if you don't see it, and grab this harder edge rounded pixel. I'm going to grab the 5 to start with, and then click over here where it says Brush Tip Shape. That's going to allow you to control the brush dynamics, and what that means is going to control the way the brush puts down that stroke on the layer that you're working with. So we can play with the angle by tilting this little arrow over here. We can play with the diameter of the brush by moving this slider here. We're going to leave it at about 5 for starters. And we can also play with the roundness of the brush, which you can adjust either manually by dialing it in here, or just grab the edge of this little circle where the dot is and bring those together, and you will get a brush that is less round. So I'm going to start with a brush that's not so round. One that is about 8% is fine. Let's zoom in a little closer by hitting Command+, and make sure in your foreground and your background that you have black selected on top as your foreground color, because that's what you're going to be painting with. What I'd like to do is come in a little bit closer by hitting Command+ so we can get nice and close. And I'm going to make sure that my brush is set at 45 degrees because that's the angle that a lot of these top lashes are moving in. 45 degrees is a good place to start up here. and you can actually keep adjusting it, and I advise you to keep adjusting it in relationship to how you see the actual natural lashes growing. So some of these outer lashes are at a little bit more or less than 45 degrees as you work your way around. Let's also change the diameter, make it a little skinnier, drop that down to only about 3 pixels. We can get some finer lashes in here. And I'm just running up with these little strokes. You can hear me clicking away, but basically trying to make a realistic kind of pattern of the way lashes would grow, and thinner alternated with thicker. So let's change this angle to the bottom. So our bottom lashes run at an opposite angle to the top. So like -130 would be about fine. And I'm just going in where they actually exist already on the lash line and just tracing through. Some of these other lashes are directly at almost 90 degrees, so I'm going to grab that and drop a few down. And let's go to the outer portion. That's -45. I just moved that, and I'm grabbing a couple of them through here and dropping them down. There's not that many to begin with. So while this doesn't look that realistic right away, if we can add a few more to the top and some longer ones, it will once we take care of the blend mode. So these lashes live on the top layer here. Let's dial down the opacity of those, and let's put it down to about 30% and see what happens. That's starting to look very realistic, that these are softer lashes that may be blended in. Let's turn that layer on and off. That's off before, and that's on afterwards. That's off before, and that's on. So it looks pretty good to me. Let's back out of there and see how realistic this is by hitting Command -. There we are. That's the after, and that's the before. So we did a pretty good job. Let's look at the overall first where we started, and hold this Option key down while you hit the eye on the bottom layer. That's the beginning of where we started, and that's afterwards. Remember, you're not limited to this. You can dial these lashes up a little bit more, and you can find what looks good to you and find the area where that looks most realistic for the picture that you're working on. I hope you learned something, and I hope you had a good time watching, and try it out on a few pictures and see what kind of enhancements you can make. Thanks again for watching.